Thank you so much, Ravi. And it is a lot to absorb and laid out such a large canvas, and also so many social political developments that were happening during Bhakti in the early period of North Indian Bhakti movement, and also the later period and its aftermath. It brought in so many social political developments and tried to weave them into the impact of Bhakti movement. It actually throws a new light into the whole thing. It's really illuminating. I request all the comrades to quickly make some initial comments and feedback kind of a thing, and then we can see how much we can have question and answer session. Initially, it appears to me that we need a whole session for question and answer session for this. An entire session for this. It's because there is so much to be discussed and to digest. So I request everybody to quickly make your immediate comments, quick comments.
तो शुरुआत करने के लिए, ताकि थोड़ा बाकी लोग भी बोलेंगे ही, मैं जो बात भार्गव आपने कही कि वो इतना एग्जॉस्टिंग प्रेजेंटेशन था, इतना बड़ा काल एक टाइम पीरियड इसमें कवर किया गया, लगभग 300 साल का पीरियड कवर किया गया है, और तमाम सारी बातें जो आई हैं जिसमें इतिहास के पहलू भी बहुत महत्वपूर्ण है। जैसे मेरे लिए बहुत ये थोड़ा सरप्राइजिंग था जो एग्रीकल्चरल डेवलपमेंट की बात रवि रख रहे थे भक्ति शुरुआत में, कि मुगल पीरियड की जैसे 18th सेंचुरी के शुरू में एग्रीकल्चर मतलब डिफॉरेस्टेशन बड़े पैमाने पर हुआ और क्या क्या हुआ। तो कुछ पहलू बहुत ही पहली बार ऐसा लग रहा था कि नई बार नए जानने का अवसर मिला है, ये बात ये है। और साथ साथ जो सवाल उठे हैं, जैसे ये तो वही आखिर वाला सवाल बड़ा महत्वपूर्ण लगता है कि एक्शन और काउंटर एक्शन भक्ति को हम लोग कैसे देखेंगे। मुझे बस एक छोटी सी क्वेरी मेरी थी, वो जो रवि चर्चा कर रहे थे, मतलब बाद में, ये तो बहुत ही छोटी क्वेरी है। जैसे अगर जब आर्य समाज की और बात हो रही थी या ब्राह्मण समाज की बात हो रही थी, मैं जरा सा जानना चाह रहा था वो, जैसे कि ये हम लोग सत्यशोधक समाज को और बाकी बात की परंपरा को उसको उसको कहाँ से सिचुएट कर सकते हैं, देख सकते हैं, क्योंकि उन्होंने एक बिल्कुल अल्टरनेट विजन देने की कोशिश की थी, अपने स्तर पर दी थी, और वो एक लीगेसी पेरियार में, अम्बेडकर में हमें दिखती है। तो वो थोड़ा एक कैसे उसको देखा जाए, वो छोटा सा सवाल था, लेकिन वो बाद में आ सकता है। लेकिन एक ओवरऑल काफी सोचने वाला मसाला काफी मिला है, काफी बातें देखने को मिली है, जो ये करना पड़ेगा, हम लोग को बात करना पड़ेगा।
Similarly, the consolidation of agriculture and consolidation of the peasant, emergence of peasant classes presently, that's a very important development. Even though the consolidation of agriculture, settled agriculture was there, was happening continuously even before that period, and deforestation was also happening in fits and bounds. But it is interesting that once we have seen this situation soon after the demise of the Mauryan Empire, and also after the demise of the Gupta Empire, when entire subcontinent became fragmented and local dynasties and local rulers came into picture. And every small kingdom wants to expand its territory and also wants to expand its agricultural land so that they can enhance their revenue. It is directly connected to their political, economic, and territorial aspirations. So we can see there is a direct link to it. And the same thing has happened soon after the demise of Mughal Empire, which actually we never paid attention to. In fact, it also connects with the re-emergence of Brahminical control and the newly emergent landowning castes, which already started gaining some ground, economic ground in Mughal period through who worked as Subedars, soldiers and this and that who got in arms. We read that part of history that new landowning uh, communities emerged in the countryside, which some people like Kushambi talked that feudalism from below kind of a thing, and we knew that debate. But there is also the issue of Hinduization and Sanskritization of this process, and further enhancing and strengthening the social order, Brahminical social order, where Brahmins have clear ideological hegemony, and these newly emergent landowning castes accepting that hegemony, as well as gaining legitimacy from the Brahminical hegemonic forces. And it is not only just social cultural, but also has political economic ramifications, because we see many such castes becoming very dominant in social, political, and economic life, like Jats, Sinhas, Patels, Reddis, Kammas, Velamas, Arnadars. In in different parts, we see the same kind of phenomena. They start emerging, and we often don't pay attention to this later phase of Mughal Empire and the full consolidation of British rule. In the interregnal period, we generally don't pay attention, and Ravi has brilliantly has thrown light on that period, and it is actually many things are happening in that period. Many things are happening actually, and in a way, we can also see many of those processes continued and actually pursued by the company rule also, because those processes are already on, and they have, of course, they must have given it a twist which are more beneficial to their interest. But that period of history, which often not looked at very keenly, has so many things, so many processes are already unleashed in that period, and which is a very important period, which has an impact on later day developments, historical developments. It's really very good, Ravi. Thank you.
It is so exhaustive and so new from perspective point of view, and also from content. As a student of history, even I haven't paid much attention to those periods which are actually the fall of greater empires, and the impact, the political, social impact it makes on the ground. It is not much visited period of history. So I think, it is so much change was happening, that so many dynamics were taking place. We look at this. We usually look at take periods as, where a strong state is is there, as periods of progress. But the fall of Mughal Empire, its socio-economic and religious implications, they are very complex indeed. And Ravi's presentation has taken a closer look at these periods, both 18th century and 19th century, and it is showing history happening on the ground in so many different lights. And we need to take a very closer look. And I totally agree with you when you say that we have to study these developments, what the Bhakti and Aftermath, in actual historical context, what was happening on the ground. I think that gives us, more realistic picture of what was happening on the ground. And 18th century, the North India is what was happening in North India is so different from what was happening from South India, in the context of the emergence of Bhakti and Ramanandi cults, and Rama as emerging as a very strong and central figure in the religious imagination of North India. That actually is different from what was happening in the South. And what actually interested me most is that with the fall of Mughal Empire, the weakening of a centralized state gave rise to or strengthened the sects, various sects like in Gosains or the Dasnami sects, and they taking up the role of the state by with their own private armies and protecting the people on the ground. And so that emergence of these sects as strong, martial sects also is very interesting for me. And 19th century, I believe that we have to go separately in detail in each century what was happening. 18th century, taking up 18th century in detail, going deeper to the level of on the ground, what was happening on the ground, and likewise 19th century, and come to 20th century developments, connecting that. For me, I think another session is needed to go deeper into that. But all in all, it gives more to think about the present times and how to fix our attitude towards all these developments. Saying that it is an excellent presentation is an understatement. Thank you, Ravi. Thank you very much.
मेरे क्वेश्चन कमेंट या कैसा लगा मेरे सब लोग बोलना चाहिए, लोग बोले तो
Yeah, man, all others were saying, and as Madhvi was saying very rightly, that it is excellent is an understatement, and there is a lot more to learn and digest. Probably, we need one more session and century-wise to know more, learn more.
Yeah, the sheer magnitude of what was taking place throughout the length and breadth of Indian subcontinent is mind-boggling. And by saying that Bhakti gives it its characteristic feature and also its limitation, I think we need to give more attention to it. This presentation actually makes me question my own understanding. It seems I don't have any of it. I need to go into the Bhakti or Indian religion once again.
हाँ रवि, आपने 300 साल का पूरा इतिहास 1.5-2 घंटे में किया और इतना कॉम्प्लेक्स है ये, तो समझने के लिए एक सेशन तो मेरे ख्याल से कम सही नहीं रहेगा, और हो सकता है जितना आपने प्रेजेंटेशन किया है उसको भी एक बार दोबारा मुझे ख्याल से 2 या 3 बार जब हम पढ़ेंगे या मतलब सुनेंगे तभी ये हो सकता है ये कॉम्प्लेक्स जो इतना इंटरवोवन चीजें है सारी को समझने में थोड़ा देर लगेगा, लेकिन इट वाज अ नाइस थिंग कि अच्छा हमको इस समझने के लिए और जानने के मिलता है कि क्या क्या चीजें समाज में हो रही है और भक्ति के नाम पे।
मुझे भी लगता है कि एक बार ये पूरा हम तो बीच में कहीं से खो गए, कि लग रहा था यार सिरे ही नहीं समझ में आ रहे, लेकिन लगा कि दोबारा इसको कई बार पहली बार नहीं समझ में आता, मेरे लिए तो नया ही था सब कुछ, तो इस सेशन को तो मेरे ख्याल से एक बार दोबारा हो किया जाना चाहिए, या जो हम लोग जो स्टडी सर्किल जैसा हैदराबाद में हुआ तो उसमें मतलब इस विषय पे तो और ज्यादा इस तरह का मतलब इस पूरी बातचीत को दोबारा एक बार करने की जरूरत लगती है।
I think that it's an excellent presentation. As comrades told, that can we have another one, particularly in 20th century developments, how it impacted. It's really excellent.
This presentation is very good. I'm surprising to know that Bhakti movement has given strength to these matas, and they are also they played an important role in communalization. But now we can see those traditions continuing now also, because so many people belonging to these matas, they are playing an important role in all these communalization things. The second one is regarding this peasantry and agriculture, that development of agriculture and consolidation of the agriculturist, they might have given rise to these caste which are now having more financial resources, and they are playing an important role. If you see, even now, as far as my knowledge is concerned, these the people belonging to the OBC caste, they are playing an important role in all these things, and they are standing as a um, backbone to the BJP, this type of ideology. One incident I just want to narrate, that when I had an interaction with a driver who belongs to an OBC caste, and when I am inquiring with about the education of his children, he is telling that he is not sending his children to the government school in here, which is located in his village, because the reason he is telling that that school is located in SC colony, so he don't want to send his children to that school. That's why he is sending to his children to the private school by paying all the fees, and though that is a burden to him. So if you see, these type of things are very surprising, because they are facing already the caste discrimination from the higher caste, but still they are not able to understand that type of discrimination, and they are standing as a basis to this type of ideology, and playing an important role in all these communalization things. And if we see the atrocities on Dalits also, recently, if we see the history, most of the um, people are belonging to the OBC caste. So I just want to know why this is happening, why they are not able to understand, and why they are repeating what they are facing from the higher castes.
मैंने जानबूझ के हिंदी लिटरेचर के बारे में भी कुछ कमेंट दिया था कि कैसे भक्ति आंदोलन को देखा गया है। तो मैं फिर उकसा रहा हूँ हिंदी वालों को कुछ उस पर भी कहने के लिए। आज तो डिस्कशन पिकअप ही नहीं कर रहा है।
स्विमिंग पूल में तैरने के लिए लोगों को ये अच्छा हो सकता है, लेकिन समुद्र जैसा लग रहा है आज का प्रेजेंटेशन, इसीलिए हो सकता है, एक कारण ये भी हो सकता है।
नहीं, एक
इतना
कारण मैं मतलब अपने डिस्कशन नहीं, मन में आने का कारण बता सकती हूँ बस। वो तो ये कि ये टुकड़ों टुकड़ों में ये बात कई बार आई है, और आज बहुत सिस्टमेटिक ढंग से शुरू से आखिर तक आ गई। बीच में भी कभी मतलब और लोग के प्रेजेंटेशन में भी इस तरह की कुछ चीजें थी, आपकी तो बार बार आई। तो अब वो बहुत अच्छे से पूरे क्रोनोलॉजी के साथ पूरे लॉजिक और फैक्ट पूरे अच्छे से दिमाग में बैठ गए हैं, तो क्वेश्चन नहीं उठ रहा है दिमाग में, खाली ऐसी चीटेड चीटेड सी फीलिंग आ रही है बहुत। आई मीन मतलब हर एक चीज को वो विपक्ष मान के फिर हम लोग किसी पक्ष को पढ़ते थे, उससे अपने आप को एसोसिएट करते थे, फिर थोड़ा सा समय बीतता है कि वो भी सारा गड़बड़ी होता है। तो वो ऐसा लग रहा है, समुद्र उस तरीके से लग रहा है कि मतलब एवरीथिंग वो मॉडर्निज्म के अंदर, प्रोग्रेसिव शब्द के अंदर, हर शब्द के अंदर से इनका एजेंडा पूरा हो ही जाता है। तो क्या ये सिर्फ यहाँ पे डिस्कशन करने की बात नहीं है। मैं तो इतने दिन से कुछ लिख भी नहीं पा रही हूँ, क्योंकि जो ही लिखो ऐसे लग रहा है सारे शब्दों में दांत मार मार के छोड़े हुए इन्होंने। आई मीन दिस वेरी, मतलब बहुत बड़ा चैलेंज है कि आप मुंह भी खोलो तो कैसे खोलो, तो कुछ भाषा ही नहीं मिलती है। अब जितने भी कुछ चीजें किताबें जो हम थोड़ा सा समझते थे कि ये कुछ प्रोग्रेसिव या अच्छी चीजें हैं, तो अब वो समझ में आ रहा है कि एक तरह से पूरा सोशल जो डायनामिज्म है उसको छोड़ भी दें एक बार को, कि कौन सी आइडियोलॉजी फॉलो करके कौन कितना तार्किक है। तो एक सोशल डायनामिज्म जो एक अपनी गति से भी जहाँ ले जा रहा है, उसको भी रोकने के इनके पास पूरे के पूरे, और इनके इनके में कौन, इनके लगभग सारा ही देश जरा से को छोड़ के, तो मतलब एक वो इतनी ज्यादा मैग्नीट्यूड में चैलेंज समझ में आ रहा है कि बहुत एक नर्वसनेस सी फील होती है, थोड़ी सॉक्ड जैसी। ये मैं बोलना चाह रही थी जी। मतलब कुल मिला के मुझे आज के डिस्कशन से समझ में आया कि वो इतना बड़ा समुद्र है, इतना बड़ा समुद्र है कि जो ही चीज काउंटर आर्ग्यूमेंट की तरह डेवलप होगी, वो भी उसको भी वो कोएप्ट कर लिया जाएगा, कर लिया जा रहा है। जब इतना सारा ब्रेन उसमें लगा हुआ है, जो आशीष नंदी और सारा जो मैंने डेवलपमेंट पढ़े। और एक बात और मैंने पाई कि जो वसुधा डालमिया वाला नैरेटिव, वो वाला जो कॉन्सेप्ट आपने बताया या कुछ बताया, तो ऐसे कुछ विद्वानों को मैं जानती हूँ कि जो इसको प्रोग्रेसिव लोगों की मीटिंग्स में कोट करते हैं, यानी कि वो जानते हैं इस नैरेटिव को, लेकिन वो लोग भी क्लास में भारतेंदु हरिश्चंद्र वगैरह के बारे में वही पढ़ा रहे हैं जो हम 10 साल पहले पढ़ाते थे। जो जानते हैं उन्होंने भी अपने पाठ को नहीं बदला, क्योंकि अगर वो 10 मिनट भी एक्स्ट्रा लग रहे होंगे क्लास की तैयारी करने में या कुछ करने में, तो दे डोंट वांट टू डू दैट। हाँ, वो प्रिपेयर्ड नोट्स तो वही वाले हैं ना जो हैं। तो वो मैं चैलेंज को समझने की, मतलब उसके मैग्नीट्यूड से थोड़ा सा घबराहट सी होती है कई बार जी।
मैं कुछ बोलूं तो जो अभी प्रेजेंटेशन तो बहुत ही बढ़िया रहा और बहुत ही पूरा जो कवर किया। मुझे लग रहा है कि टुकड़े टुकड़े के बजाय एक साथ सब पूरा चित्र आता है तो वो ज्यादा अच्छी तरह से उसको हम कनेक्ट कर पाते हैं। तो एक तो ये था कि पूरा हालांकि एक साथ सारा समझना मुश्किल है, लेकिन फिर भी एक बड़ा चित्र और पूरा चित्र बन गया। हिंदी जितना, जैसे बाहर कभी लेक्चर में भी बात हो रही थी, प्रेजेंटेशन में भी, कि बाहर जिस तरह से, मतलब इंडियन लोगों ने ही बाहर जाके, जिन लोगों ने इस विषय पे काम किया है, रिसर्च वर्क किया है, उनका काम करने का जो एक अलग पर्सपेक्टिव भी है और बहुत व्यापक है, और ठीक ठीक तरह से वो रिसर्च करते हैं। तो मैं कंपेयर कर रही थी कि यहाँ पे हम लोग जितनी साहित्य के, यहाँ के जो बड़े बड़े हिंदी साहित्य के विद्वान हैं या जो आलोचक हैं, अगर उनका भी देखा जाए तो मुझे जो फर्क दिखता है, दो तीन बातें। एक तो ये कि वो पूरा साहित्य को एक 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 पेरिफेरी में रख दिया गया है, मतलब हिंदी साहित्य की दुनिया को एक एक चौहद्दी में बांट दिया गया, और ज्यादातर उसमें हिस्ट्री या उस तरह की चीजों से उसको व्यापक परिप्रेक्ष्य से उसको जोड़ करके बहुत कम देखा भी गया है तो बहुत पार्शियल है, तो उससे एक बड़ा चित्र नहीं बनता है। और दूसरा लग रहा है कि जैसे पूरा मतलब इतना पवित्र चीज है कि भक्ति आंदोलन ही क्या, पूरा जो साहित्य का इतिहास है उसको आलोचना से परे रखने जैसा, कोई कहता नहीं है ऐसे, लेकिन आलोचना से परे रखने रखने जैसा लगता है। अब उसकी क्या वजह है? वो कन्विक्शन है उस साहित्य के प्रति कि जो है जैसा है, कबीर तुलसी और हिंदी, मतलब चारों युग जो है हिंदी साहित्य के, उसको टच नहीं करना है, वो उसमें विश्वास है लोगों का, या ये है कि अगर सवाल करेंगे तो फिर बहुत सारी परतें खुलेंगी और उससे जद्दोजहद करने के लिए हिंदी साहित्य का जो बौद्धिक वर्ग है वो तैयार है कि नहीं। तो इसमें बहुत सारी चीजें मुझे लग रही हैं, क्योंकि एक तरफ लगता है कि नहीं टच करते हैं, फिर लगता है कि नहीं, उनको ऐसा तो नहीं है कि उनको समझ नहीं होगी। जैसे मतलब बहुत नाम नहीं ले रही हूँ, बहुत सारे जो विद्वान लोग हैं हिंदी के, वो आखिर क्यों नहीं इस बड़े पर्सपेक्टिव से देख पाते, या भक्ति आंदोलन को क्यों एक तरह से सेक्रेट चीज मान करके उस पर सवाल नहीं उठता है। तो ये एक बहुत बड़ा सवाल है हिंदी साहित्य के इतिहास जानने वालों के लिए या साहित्यकारों के लिए, कि सवाल नहीं उठाने के पीछे क्या कारण है। जैसे हरिश्चंद्र, भारतेंदु हरिश्चंद्र की बात हो रही थी। पूरा उनका तो इतिहास मौजूद है, लेकिन जितने मुखर ढंग से उनकी आलोचना होनी चाहिए वो नहीं होती है। वो हिंदी साहित्य के नए युग का सूत्रपात करने वाले के रूप में ही सिर्फ वो एस्टैब्लिश्ड हैं, लेकिन उनकी बाकी चीजें उतने सरफेस पे नहीं आती हैं।
लोग बोलते हैं तब तक मैं एक काम करता हूँ, एक छोटा सा इंटरवेंशन वो सुभाष के सवाल पर कि सत्यशोधक समाज वाली धारा को वो फूले वाली धारा को कैसे देखा जाए, कैसे इसमें लोकेट किया जाए। तो मैंने उसका मेंशन इसलिए नहीं किया क्योंकि वो थोड़ा मैं मोस्टली जब मैंने पढ़ना इस विषय पे शुरू किया तो ज्यादातर मैंने अपने आप को नॉर्थ इंडिया में कन्फाइन किया, हालांकि बहुत सारे कमेंट जनरल थे। उन सत्यशोधक मंडल को मैं देखूंगा कि दैट इज फार मोर रेडिकल रिफॉर्मिस्ट, और उसके फार मोर रेडिकल रिफॉर्मिस्ट होने के पीछे कारण ये था कि दैट इंक्लूडेड the reform from the caste angle. The way I mentioned Ambedkar's thing, from that in Ambedkar did not hesitate from frontally criticizing Hinduism per se. And he said that, as long as Hinduism is there, caste system will not go away, and Dalits will not be liberated. More or less, I am paraphrasing, that kind of position. So I haven't read Phule myself, some comments, and people like Subhash who write or, talk more about it, that's all. My knowledge is limited. But I think that they had the modernity, they had no if and buts to modernity. So they were very honestly, authentically modernist, critical of caste. So they had good points of, in a way, some good points of Brahmo Samaj, that kind of radicality, as far as modernity was concerned. And they had the bold critique of Hindu caste hierarchy. So that, my expectation will be, as if I read them in future, my expectation will be that they will be far more acceptable to us because they are more thoroughly modernist. One thing I want to do, I don't know this technology, if I wanted to show you something in this context. It relates to caste and the way bhakti is looked at by great stalwarts, Gandhi, Tagore, and others included. There is a well-known book that I have shared with many of you, of Hawley, Hawley, that is his last name. That book is on Bhakti movement, and the name of the book, the name of the book is Storm of Songs. And he starts that book by a poem from Rabindranath Tagore. Rabindranath Tagore wrote that poem on the second day of Gandhi's fast, in 1933, on the caste question, or on the Ambedkar question, or on the Pune Pact, kind of thing, So he wrote that poem, Tagore wrote that poem while Gandhi was fasting. And in that he describes the encounter of Ramanand, same Ramanand that we talked about, who started Ramananda Sampradaya, and who was a disciple of Ramanuj, or, he comes in that lineage, His encounter with Ravidas, the famous Bhakt poet saint, from Dalit caste, I want to read that poem to you, or show that poem to you, and read that poem to you. And one of the points that I could not make in the main presentation was how to take the view of caste system and bhakti, an entire Hindu civilization kind of discourse, from the Dalit angle of today, the social movement angle today. I think that Tagore got away with that poem. He will be lynched by today's Dalit ideologues for writing that poem, because Ravidas is so subservient, so respectful, so what is the word? So he offers himself almost, and he feels so good. So he feels almost like, he has a sublime, happiness, that Ramanand, without asking his caste, he embraced him, Ramanand the Brahmin. So now the kind of subservience that come through in that poem, and that kind of released the storm of songs in Ravidas. That is where the storm of songs is Tagorean phrase. In the phrase of Tagore, I don't know the Bangla original, but that storm of songs that came, that erupted from Ravidas's being, so to speak, was one embrace from Ramanand. That now the reason I am bringing this point, I of course will agree with the Dalit movement that that's Rabindranath Tagore's own worldview is speaking through that poem, which, whether he realizes that or not, is more Ramanand centric than Ravidas centric, and does not impart modern kind of dignity to Ravidas, vis-a-vis Ramanand. That critique I will agree. And yet I would like to understand what, in the light of our own left movement, and in the light of today's social movement like Dalit movement or feminist movements, how should we look at our past? In a smaller group, I was discussing the other day that if I were to reject all accomplishment of the classical era, because those were the accomplishment of the Sanskritic era, and those were the accomplishment of Brahmins only, and that highly rigid society when others were not even allowed to read and write, and were not allowed to read Vedas or even hear Vedas being recited. That kind of society we come from. And in that kind of society, we had great writers, great grammarians, great philosophers, and even great astronomers like Aryabhatta, mathematicians like Aryabhatta. They were all Brahmins. They were all part of that highly Brahminical Sanskritic order, and they had some great accomplishments. What attitude we will take to that, or how does a Dalit look at the accomplishment of ancient India? The feeling I get, I may be caricaturing the movement. Maybe if asked, the movement ideologues will have a more comprehensive and more composite position. But the impression one gets is that, oh, why are you talking about the accomplishment of the Sanskritic Brahminical era? Do you want to sneak in Brahmins again? Or people will say that, oh, if I scratch you, you come out as a Savarna or as a Brahminical, even though I don't belong to that caste, but, I mean the ideology, So, I was telling a small group of our friends, that this rejection may or may not happen. But the impression I have is that the social movements will reject ancient India, accomplishments of ancient India. And this rejection, if it happens, it appears to me as if we will reject Greek philosophy and Greek geometry and Greek mathematics, because they were all accomplishments of slave owners. So if we look at look at the ancient history and ancient accomplishments only through the social lens, then for us, ancient past should not exist. Just as for Hindutva gang, the Mughal era or the Delhi Sultanate does not exist. The Islamic glory does not exist. Same way for us coming from the left and social movement, the ancient glory should not exist. No. And we should reject Greek mathematics, and we should reject Kalidas and Aryabhatta. So I do not know what kind of attention the ideologues of the social movements have paid to them, but the complexity that we have, should we denounce Tagore for that poem? The poem, and I will read that poem to you. I will put it. Let me share that screen. I hope if I minimize it, still you can hear me. Can you hear me?
but the poem is not visible.
Okay, let me first, but you can hear me, na?
Yes, yes, yes.
Comrade, yes, yes, you are audible.
Okay, so let me show this. Oh, let me share first. Share screen, and I want to share this poem. Share. Can you hear me?
Yes, comrade.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, both.
And oh, sorry, where did it go? May 10th, 1933, Sweet Mercy. This is the poem Tagore wrote on the third day of Gandhi's fast against untouchability in 1933. Okay, the translation of his poem goes, Raidas, the sweeper, was tanner by caste, whose touch was shunned by the wayfarers, and the crowded streets were lonely for him. Master Ramanand was walking to the temple after his morning bath when Raidas bowed himself down before him from a distance. Who are you, my friend? Asked the great Brahmin. And the answer came, I am mere dust, dry and barren, trodden down by the despising days and nights. Thou, my master, art a cloud on the far-away sky. If sweet mercy be showered from thee upon the lowly earth, the dumb dust will cry out in ecstasy of flowers. Master took him to his breast, pouring on him his lavish love, which made a storm of songs to burst across the heart of Raidas, the sweeper. So that is the poem, which, storm of songs, the phrase comes from there. Now, how do you feel about that poem? Is it a good poem, bad poem? Tagore should be praised. Tagore should be denounced for that poem. What should we do? What attitude should we have?
I honestly say I have a storm of rage in me after reading that poem. After listening to that poem. It is so condescending. But Ravidas, also from Banaras and born in a cobbler's family, belief is that some guru must have influenced him, initiated him into the spiritual path and all that. That's the only subtext one can understand why he is saying that. Rabindranath Tagore is saying that. And why he wrote in the context of controversy or dispute between Gandhi and Ambedkar, it is very difficult to understand. Because Ambedkar definitely is not like us.
No, for me, it gives a very good idea of why the so-called lower Varna wanted to remain in the fold, within the fold of Hinduism, Vaishnavism, or whatever it is. Because they really thought that these people, the Brahmins, they were coming from above. And they wanted their acceptance. I think this is a very good poem from that point of view.
As a literary expression, it's an excellent poem. And even the title is so poetic and beautiful, Storm of Songs. And yeah, I agree that it is condescending. And in writing in 20th century and in the 1930s, when Ambedkar is no Raidas at all, and Ambedkar as a very strong critic of Hinduism and its caste system, he is actually countering it from a modernist plank, firmly rooted on modernist plank, and trying to see the similarity between Ramanand and Raidas. Here is, I think, that's a bit too much for me to take.
रवि, मुझे लगता है कि ये हेलो, am I audible? हाँ, रवि, मुझे लगता है कि जैसे देखो गांधी का फास्टिंग चल रहा था और उसने ये बात कही है, तो कहीं ऐसा तो मैसेज नहीं निकल रहा है कि वो गांधी का मजाक उड़ा रहा है कि देखो ये रविदास और ये रामानुज एक दूसरे को मतलब गले लगा रहे हैं और आप फास्ट पर बैठे हैं अनटचेबिलिटी के लिए. आई मे बी रॉन्ग, आई डोंट नो.
No, that's a good point, Ishwar Bhai. I wanted to clarify that. I may have conveyed a wrong impression that this was being written in the context of Gandhi and Ambedkar. I am sorry if I conveyed that impression. That had already happened already in 1932. This was the fast Gandhi was undertaking against untouchability. And Rabindranath Tagore, no, that is not the case. Ishwar Bhai, he was not making fun of Gandhi. Actually, he was supporting Gandhi, saying that, oh, look at your own history. Why do you practice untouchability? Even great Brahmin Ramanand embraced, Ravidas, who was a cobbler, who was a Dalit, caste. So it is a more simple motive. There are no great hidden meanings and psychologies in Tagore's poem. Tagore is just writing a poetry showing that the great Brahmin Ramanand embraced Ravidas, and you today, you are no great, but still you practice today untouchability. That simple text was there. But my point in bringing this to your attention is something different. I understand the context why Tagore wrote that. I have no problem with that. He was criticizing untouchability, or he was giving an example to those people who practice untouchability and giving the example of Ramanand. But the way it came out in the poem, the way Bhargava was saying that he felt enraged reading that because of the lack of dignity that comes on the part of Ravidas, But it is known, at least, folklore is that Ravidas was a disciple of Ramanand. And if anybody has a possibility of being disciple of Ramanand, giving their lifetime, it is Ravidas. Tulsidas could not have been a disciple of Ramanand because he came a little later, But Ravidas's life overlapped with Ramanand's life in whichever birthday is taken for Ramanand. Ramanand's birthday is somewhere between 1300 and 1380, So if it is during the middle of 14th century, then it overlaps with Ravidas's birth, Ravidas's life. And both of them were in Kashi. So it is possible that Ravidas was a direct disciple of Ramanand. The scholars would know better. I am no scholar or historian. But I am raising a different question, that we may all feel enraged today by the way Raidas comes as subservient to the Lord great Brahmin Ramanand, But what kind of attitude we should have when we come to history? If it is a fact that, let us say, no one knows, but let us say that Raidas was actually that subservient to his Guru Ramanand. I am willing to believe that, because I have seen in my own childhood in 20th century in Bihar, when Dalits were not very dignified, talking to us or talking to any upper caste people. They did not sit on the cot. They sat on the ground, even if there were higher places to sit. And they were they paid their respects from afar. Untouchability was very much in practice in my village. When it came to Dalit caste and even lower among the Dalit caste. Like what is known as Dome. The cleaner sweeper. Part of Dalit caste, So I am willing to believe that Ravidas may have been very subservient, very undignifiedly and in a very undignified way subservient to Ramanand. So if it happened as a fact of history, if it happens as a fact of life, how do I look at it as a fact of history? That's the point I want to bring in. Do I ignore that part of history? Do I never talk about Ramanand's, Raidas's subservience to Ramanand? Do I never bring that out? Or I say that I understand that that kind of untouchability, that kind of lack of dignity was very prevalent in the Dalit caste vis-a-vis even the common Brahmin, let alone the great Brahmin like Ramanand, let alone the great teacher like Ramanand. So the kind of attitude I will have, I think now I am growing into that attitude that I will not feel enraged. I will not feel enraged if I come to examples or instances of Kalidas or Aryabhat or Panini or Patanjali, whoever, mistreating, treating with lot of disrespect, somebody coming from a lower caste. Because I understand it as a historical fact, and that does not come in the way of my acknowledging the greatness of Ramanand or greatness of Tagore or greatness of whoever, Patanjali or Panini or any great Brahmin of antiquity. How to reconcile that attitude with today I at the same time I feel enraged too if something like that happens in front of me in a film, in a novel, in a poetry, so both the feelings are there. I feel enraged as well as I am willing to understand that that is how our society was, and it was not the fault of Tagore to write like that, because his society was submerged in that, in that kind of reality, that kind of practice. It was not a fault of Raidas to feel subservient to great Brahmin Ramanand. I am just asking for understanding and not always an activist mode when you read history, that how can you tolerate that, that kind of thing, because today we will not tolerate that. So the historical attitude, and the reason I am making that point is that when it comes to making sense of history, the one way to fight mythical Hinduism, communal Hinduism, traditionalist Hinduism, sectarian Hinduism, is to look at history as history. The way I often say, and I also wrote to somebody recently, that I would like India to feel proud of not of Ram, but of Valmiki. I would like to feel India proud not of Krishna, but of Vyasa. Whoever, the great epic writers, the great poets who created those characters of Rama and Krishna, we should feel proud of the literature of the poets and those historical figures who created those characters. And we should not worship and feel proud of Rama and Krishna as, gods, because they are simply mythical figures, created characters, So someday when India, in distant future, 100 years from now, when India becomes modern or at a social level, people will not worship Ram, but they will admire the greatness of Valmiki. That is why, and in order to admire Valmiki, despite the fact that he created the character of Ram, admire Vyas despite the fact that he created characters, as they were in Mahabharata, all kinds of characters. Or Tagore, who argued against untouchability by citing the example of Ramanand embracing Raidas and Raidas feeling elated that he was embraced by the Brahmin, I would understand that in that context, I will not feel enraged.
No, the feeling of enragement, I was spoken because I misunderstood that poem was written in the context of controversy between Ambedkar and Gandhi. And so if it's written in the context of Gandhi starting fasting on to death against untouchability, I can perfectly understand. Even though I may have disagreements about his choice of example or choice of words, but nonetheless, I can understand his spirit. And even then, I can perfectly understand in those times of Ramanand times, when caste hierarchy was so rigid, and it is unthinkable for a person of untouchable caste even to approach a person from a higher caste and a teacher, a spiritual teacher from a Brahminical caste is making himself available and accepting disciples from all castes, even from untouchable caste. I definitely respect him. Even though in modern times it may appear as condescending, but in those times it is definitely a great step forward. I can definitely understand. But similarly, I can take Spartacus as my idol, but nonetheless Aristotle, who thought even maybe stated that slaves are not fully human. I cannot escape reading him and respecting him and learning from him. So I think that we should have that such an.
Go ahead, anybody. Anant has in the chat box a very good comment and question. I mean, but I would like him to speak. It's a small group. Come on the screen and say your thing, if you can.
Read out, Anant. Read out your own question. Come on to the screen. We want to see you also.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that so many newer things have come. So still, I was also thinking about it. So many things that we didn't know, or maybe we didn't give any time to think about. Additionally, what I was thinking that we are discussing this Bhakti movement in North India, and how so many things came up. I think all these are related also. That today there are some point that BJP and RSS they are able to take up. How it has come that a small state, Haryana, where the food habit of Haryana is different with respect to other parts of country, and how these habits have come, how the Bhakti movement has impacted, and food habits have got changed, and because of that, today's communal forces are very easily talking about food habits and maybe what people are wearing and some other kind of thing, and they are making it a symbol of their fight and whatever they are trying to do with this country. So what I understand is that despite Bhakti movement in South India, which I think was majorly in Shaivite in nature, so there the country and people are behaving in a different way. Bengal, I also take that way. So people are behaving in a different way. Punjab has a lot of impact of Guru Nanak. So there also behavior of people and acceptance or rejection of BJP and RSS is in a different way. But Western UP and Haryana, which are very much near, maybe it is the impact of Arya Samaj that people talk about, that non-veg is they don't eat non-veg, and there are some other habits which BJP has utilized, and I think has cornered Rajasthan, Haryana, Western UP, and all other areas of North India, which may say the cow belt. And I think they have succeeded in doing whatever they have been able to do till now. So I think when we are discussing Bhakti movement, if this aspect is also added, we might be much more prepared in coming times, because these forces are going to continue to raise this kind of issues and rally people around them. But other than this, obviously, this is absolutely new, and because I have not been a formal student of history and literature, so I think, but these are two things which impact society quite a lot. So we try to understand, but that becomes a different part of our life. Professionally, when we are doing something else which we find totally unrelated to whatever whatever basically is impacting society in a bigger way. So how the people of North India, how their culture, their understanding, their food habits, their clothing habits, etc., they have got impacted, and especially I think overall when I'm seeing these symbols, but majorly the caste system, how it has come up, how different castes have traveled rather, uh, how their upward mobility has come up, how middle peasant castes are in a way, Dalits are much more against the middle peasant caste than Brahmins and Savarnas. So I think these are very important point to understand. So quite a lot of these things have come up in today's discussion. But I was also agreeing if we can assemble some of these points and what others have said, and we can have a session like this, maybe taking over these points which are in the mind of other participants, and something we can discuss in a similar kind of study. That's all. I think this is what was in my mind.
Thank you, Rajiv. Now, Anant is suffering from severe throat infection, so I read out his response. From the axial revolutions to counter-axial revolutions, to the demise of the Mughal Empire and the political appropriation and agricultural expansion, and where a concerted effort to re-Sanskritization happened, the broad chapterization, connectivity, flow are very helpful to revisit our history in this light. Simultaneously, I think we must also shed light on why, during the British Raj, Bhakti movements behaved and shaped themselves very differently in all three presidencies, namely Bengal, Bombay, and Madras. Especially the Bhakti movement, which is seen today as more communal and trying to spread through competitive electoral politics, I see sprouted out in the region of Bombay presidency. Do we have an explanation for this?
Well, I can make an intervention at this point before, I'm hoping that everybody will speak and say something, but I will connect these three things that, for example, the diversity of practices, life practices that Rajiv just brought out in one way, and in another way, political response, that kind of diversity Anant is bringing out in his case, we should also keep in mind that whenever we consider such large and complex phenomena and such large subcontinent, these are all these generalizations, and what we did today also is a kind of generalization, because the reality spread across the subcontinent and spread across several hundred years must have gone through many, many things that we don't know about. So the generalizations and abstractions have their limitations. So whenever we are making some general comments or statements, we should keep in mind that the actual situation was far more complex and diverse. For example, I can very easily imagine that in an area, one mutt, one guru, one sect will have dominance for, let us say, 50 years. And that will shape that area and that region in such a way that over course of time, that area will develop into something separate from a nearby area. So a Haryana will emerge different from, say Rajasthan, or a Haryana will emerge different from nearby Delhi even, or, because it so happened that some Baba, some sect, some Guru, or some other phenomena, not just the religious phenomena, some other phenomena held sway in a small area, but large enough area to create a kind of cultural homogeneity in that small area, and hence contributed to the cultural diversity in the larger area, because it created a subculture, so to speak. Even today, just to take an example, even today, if you see the followers of a given Baba, what is Jai Gurudev in Eastern UP, or followers of some larger sect, let's say in western part of India, earlier Arya Samaj, or in today's times, Satnamis or this or that. I don't even know the names of all these sects, but these Babas are well known, they create their own subculture. You can almost identify in Eastern UP, I know, a follower of Jai Gurudev, even if he does not say that he's a follower of Jai Gurudev. I don't know what is the story with the next generation, but I am talking of my generation when I was a villager or when I was in Gorakhpur and so on. So, how do these stable cultures, even in a region, separate cultures arise? How does Haryana separate itself culturally from not only from Sikh Punjab, but even from Hindu Punjab? Hindus of Punjab are very different from Jat Hindus of Haryana. Jat Sikhs of Punjab are very different from Jat Hindus of Western UP. So these subcultures arise through a long, complex history in which history is not being made from top. Whatever is happening coming from the top is getting absorbed into and dissolved into the whatever is happening on the ground. And on the ground, these religious movements are there. These caste struggles are there. Life on the ground is there, so to speak. So this is what we call, in an abstract methodological scientific way, that if you take a large piece of live homogeneous thing, it will become heterogeneous on its own. Homogeneity always develops into heterogeneity. It coagulates, it splits, it becomes diverse. You cannot maintain in real life a very large homogeneous flat structure. That structure will fragment and become heterogeneous. There are many ways that it happens in history. So heterogenization on the ground is far more common than homogenization that comes from larger universal ideas, like idea of nationalism or idea of a large religion or idea of a large civilization. Those are homogeneous abstractions. Actually, even when those abstractions hold sway, the actual life on ground is very, very diverse, very complex, very non-homogeneous. So that is the general comment I can make. I do not have a specific answer to Anand's question, but that comes for me in that purview. I will not be surprised if the impact of Bhakti was more communal in Bombay or Madras presidency and less communal in Bengal, because in Bengal, the modernity impact was far more than nativist impact in Maratha area or than the Brahminical impact in Madras, presidency. And a very small number of Brahmins lording over a very large society. That is what gave rise to the resistance and a struggle against that Brahmin domination in South, which you don't see with the same intensity in North, because North, the Brahmins are larger in number and their domination is somewhat diluter than the domination of Tamil Brahmins over the Tamil society, and so to speak. So many factors come into play. For some reason, Bengal absorbed the British colonial modernity in a very different way from anybody else. They landed on the shores, in Calcutta as well as in Madras, to start with. But Madras reacted to them, absorbed them or reacted to them very differently from Bengal reacted to them. So again, you go back to why did Bengal reacted differently? So the previous history of Bengal, previous culture of Bengal comes into play, and so on. And it becomes endless. Our knowledge is limited. It only tells us to be modest in making very large scale statements and always be aware that, of a very complex history cannot be captured, in very singular large statements. I wanted to make a comment about Ishwar Bhai, but I'm forgetting the point he just made. Ishwar Bhai, can you repeat what you said? I responded to Rupali, Anant, and what Rajiv was saying. but ईश्वर भाई, was it the same point or?
नहीं, मेरे ज्यादा कुछ नहीं था, मैं तो ज्यादातर वो रविंद्रनाथ का जो अपने पोएम था उसके बारे में।
अच्छा,
वो तो ऑलरेडी यू हैव।
Okay, go ahead and make further comments, all of you, especially those who haven't spoken. Oh yes, and one more comment for Hindi, what Rupali made, that I agree with her, कि वो हिंदी मुझे भी समझ में नहीं आता कि हिंदी इंटेलिजेंसिया एंड हिंदी लिटरेरी स्फीयर, हिंदी लिटरेरी पब्लिक स्फीयर क्यों इतना डिफरेंट है, और अपने ही इतिहास को क्यों इतना लिमिटेड वे में देख रहा है, क्यों नहीं ब्रॉडर फ्रेमवर्क, हिस्टोरिकल फ्रेमवर्क ले रहा है, क्यों हर कोई कबीर में से ही कोई नया माने निकालने को तैयार है, हर कोई कबीर को इंटरप्रेट करेगा, हर कोई नए जमाने का हजारी प्रसाद द्विवेदी बनना चाहेगा, वगैरह वगैरह। लेकिन उस पीरियड की हिस्ट्री में कबीर कैसे फिट होते हैं, और कबीर पंथ का हश्र क्या हुआ और क्या हुआ, वो क्यों नहीं इन्वेस्टिगेट किया जाता, लोग रियल रिसर्चर क्यों नहीं बनते। केवल कबीर का टेक्स्ट का री इंटरप्रिटेशन हिंदी आलोचक का काम नहीं होना चाहिए ना, हिंदी आलोचक का काम होना चाहिए पूरी धारा को इतिहास के संदर्भ में और एक्चुअली क्या हुआ उन लोगों का, कबीरपंथियों का और दूसरों का, वो देखा जाना चाहिए। और फिर उसको, जैसे हम लोग स्कॉलर्स नहीं है लेकिन हम लोग कोशिश कर रहे हैं कि पूरे हिंदुस्तान के साथ क्या हुआ, और 3000 साल की हिस्ट्री में भक्ति आंदोलन कहाँ फिट होता है, और उसका रोल प्रोग्रेसिव था, लार्जली रिग्रेसिव था, मिक्स था, क्या क्या था, ये लार्जर कॉन्टेक्स्ट में क्यों नहीं देखा जाता, ये हिंदी बुद्धिजीवियों से ये अपेक्षा की जानी चाहिए। और हिंदी के जो लोग हैं वो किसी तरह से वो उकसाएं हिंदी बुद्धिजीवियों को, या खुद हिंदी बुद्धिजीवी वैसा बने जो इन चीजों को लिखना शुरू करें, और उनको चैलेंज करें। आखिर हजारी प्रसाद, रामचंद्र शुक्ल और हजारी प्रसाद द्विवेदी से शुरू होकर पुरुषोत्तम अग्रवाल तक आके क्यों टिक जाएं, और क्यों उनको अथॉरिटी मान लें, जबकि इतना बड़ा काम और उतना बड़ा नाम नहीं माना जाएगा। फॉर एग्जांपल वसुधा डालमिया, जो कि अमेरिका के एक यूनिवर्सिटी में प्रोफेसर हैं, पढ़ाती हैं हिंदी में, पुरुषोत्तम अग्रवाल ज्यादा कोट होंगे, और पुरुषोत्तम अग्रवाल को इवन वसुधा डालमिया भी कोट करती हैं, तो वो माने जाते हैं उसमें। लेकिन हम उनकी सीमाएं जो हैं वो तो देखी जानी चाहिए ना, और वैसे वसुधा, हिंदी का वसुधा डालमिया तो कम से कम कोई पैदा हो ना।
Am I audible? The question that has very emphatically come up about why did not the scholars look at or contextualize the Bhakti movement, not just in a span of like 3000 years or so, but even in the span of medieval history, there is an absurd lack of contextualization of a historical period that had occurred and also a lack of objectivity that comes along with it. One reason possibly that comes to my mind is maybe there is a kind of bhakti even within academia, but the subservience here is not towards an all-empowering, omnipresent, omnipotent entity. It is just subservience towards people and their lived experiences. Because, I mean, as far as I can understand, academia has confined itself to either two sources of understanding history. It can be from the books, from the texts that were written, but it can also be from the people who have lived the reality of that time, either coming from oral histories or from folklore or from other subaltern, sources of knowledge. But these two are not the all end and be end of it, right? I mean, academia did not just consider that. So this bhakti within academia towards the people and towards their, I mean, if a historian goes ahead and inquires about the archives, about all the literary texts that were produced in a specific period of time, say in this case bhakti, or other texts, it would be considered as elitist. So to shed off that bias, people then blindly go towards what, scholars blindly go towards what people have experienced. But how did that entire historical process or period pan out in the larger scheme of things is lost in this hair-splitting pedantry, where, nuances matter the most, but like never the larger picture. So that is there. Even for example, in the case of M.N. Srinivas, there is no acceptance to the idea of, say, Sanskritization. There is some acceptance to what dominant caste means or whatever, at least in sociological circles. But Sanskritization just comes off as an offensive thing for people to accept because somebody, M.N. Srinivas, coming from a particular social location, say he is himself a Brahmin, and he is telling, the world that so-called lower caste people have emulated the higher castes, and they have tried to mend their rituals, mend their lifestyles to that of the upper castes. But that, if not looked at with a certain objectivity and certain sense of history, comes off as offensive to the people of lower castes. And then all kinds of social movements and all kinds of subaltern sociologists and historians have responded very harshly to what he had to say. I mean, it is of course a different thing. He can be a casteist, and that is a very good possibility, but that doesn't negate the fact that what he's talking about when he writes about Sanskritization can be discarded purely on an ad hominem, allegation that M.N. Srinivas was a Brahmin. When he went to field work in his fictional village Rampura, he did not, stay with the Dalits or stay with OBCs. He stayed in a Brahmin colony, but that was the limit of what he could do. I mean, so this kind of hair-splitting pedantry is quite common, and that has cost us a lot in terms of historical understanding, not just about Bhakti, but also about many other social, socio-economic processes and periods in history that have been left out in the larger scheme of things.
Very well said, Dhatri. I completely 100% agree, and I could not have said it as well as you have said. Very well done. Very, very good comment. I 100% accept it.
और कोई कुछ नहीं पूछ रहा है तो मुझे एक तो जो अभी आपने जवाब बोला हेट्रोजेनाइजेशन और नॉन होमोजीनियस जो पूरा बताया अभी कि इतना डाइवर्स और इतनी कॉम्प्लेक्स हिस्ट्री जहाँ की भी होगी वहाँ ये और बढ़ जाएगा। तो एक तो मेरे मन में ये था कि जैसे नेशनलाइजेशन पे ही जब हम बात कर रहे थे तो वो कभी मतलब उस तरह से तो कभी नेशन की थ्योरी भी कभी नीचे ठीक से मतलब बिल्ट हुई भी नहीं कभी भी यार मॉडर्निटी की। तो मैं ये पूछना चाह रही थी कि इतनी हिट्रोजेनियस इतनी मल्टी लेयर सोसाइटी में क्या फांसीवाद उस तरह से आ भी सकता है जिस तरह से हम बात किया करते हैं? ये सवाल मेरे मन में आया था एक तो। और एक रिक्वेस्ट थी मेरी कि आप वो जो रविन्द्रनाथ टैगोर वाली कविता पे आप बोल रहे थे तो कुछ ना कुछ नेटवर्क में इश्यू थोड़ा सा हो गया था, तो बहुत ब्रीफ में एक बार आप अपना टेक उसमें रिपीट कर देंगे प्लीज, रविन्द्रनाथ टैगोर वाली कविता पे। जी मतलब वो आप टैगोर की वो जो मर्सी वाली फीलिंग या जो एक ग्रेटनेस से एक अपर से एम्ब्रेस कर रहे हैं बहुत ऊपर से कहीं से, तो उसको आपने तारीफ किया या क्रिटिसाइज किया, मैं ठीक से नहीं ले पाई। जी
मैं हिंदी में थोड़ा बोलता हूँ। आई थिंक हिंदी भी दूसरे लोग जो यहाँ उपस्थित हैं उनको भी थोड़ा बहुत तो समझ में आती ही है। तो पहली बात तो हेट्रोजेनस डाइवर्स सोसाइटी में फासिज्म आ सकता है कि नहीं, तो उसका मोटा जवाब ये है कि अगर हेट्रोजेनस डाइवर्स सोसाइटी में नेशनलिज्म आ सकता है, यानी एक नेशन के कॉन्सेप्ट के अंदर बहुत सारी डिफरेंट किस्म की सोशल फॉर्मेशंस और सोशल आइडेंटिटीज कायम रहती हैं, और उनके कायम रहने के बावजूद एक छाते वाला कॉन्सेप्ट नेशन का छा जाता है उसके ऊपर। उस नेशन वाले छाते के नीचे बहुत सारे धर्म, जाति, संप्रदाय अगर हो सकते हैं, बहुत तरह तरह के जीवन रूप, सामाजिक जीवन रूप अगर हो सकते हैं, और उनके होते हुए नेशन एक सोशल इमेजिनरी बन सकता है। ये सारे लोग जो डिफरेंट कास्ट और डिफरेंट कम्युनिटीज को बिलोंग करते हैं, वो एक साथ अपने आप को इंडियन नेशन का पार्ट अगर इमेजिन करते हैं, तो इंडियन नेशन एक रियलिटी बन जाता है। अगर नेशन एस्टेब्लिश हो जाता है डाइवर्सिटी और हेट्रोजेनाइटी के बावजूद, तो फासिज्म भी एस्टेब्लिश हो सकता है, क्योंकि फासिज्म उस प्लेन पर ऑपरेट करता है, उस पॉलिटिकल प्लेन पर ऑपरेट करता है। फासिज्म एक इस तरह का सोशल इमेजिनरी है, जिस तरह का नेशन एक सोशल इमेजिनरी है, उसमें वो जोड़ देता है फासिज्म को कि एक तरफ वो एंशियंट हिस्ट्री के एक खास पाठ से जोड़ देता है, एक खास इंटरप्रिटेशन से जोड़ देता है कि वी हैव बीन इंडियंस फॉर 3000 years and India was great and we are reclaiming that India, as Germans were saying that, even though German nation 19वीं सदी की देन है, 19वीं सदी में जर्मनी नेशन के रूप में सामने आया, जर्मनी का यूनिफिकेशन हुआ, लेकिन वो क्लेम करने लगे पूरा अपना ग्रीक टाइम से एंड सो ऑन, या आर्यन टाइम से। तो एक तरफ वो एंशियंट हिस्ट्री क्लेम करता है फासिज्म, नेशनलिज्म का वो इंटरप्रिटेशन, और दूसरी तरफ वो अथॉरिटेरियन स्ट्रॉन्ग लीडर, जो वो स्ट्रॉन्ग लीडर जिसको अगर आप फॉलो करें और जिसको वर्शिप करें तो वो एंशियंट ग्लोरी को वो वापस ले आ देगा, और जो आइडेंटिटी इमेजिन की गई है नेशनल आइडेंटिटी, उस नेशनल आइडेंटिटी को ग्लोरियस बना देगा। ये सारे लार्जर सोशल इमेजिनरीज हैं। तो इसलिए मेरे मेरे ख्याल से हेट्रोजेनाइटी के ऊपर फासिज्म पॉसिबल है, और इसीलिए मैं जब बहुत सारे हमारे मित्र थिंकर्स फिलोसफर्स से भी हम डिसएग्री करते हैं, जो कहते हैं कि अरे ये जो फासिस्ट हैं इनको इंडिया के बारे में क्या पता, इंडिया तो हमेशा टॉलरेंट रहा है, प्लूरलिस्ट रहा है, वेरियस मतांतरों वाला रहा है और मतांतरों की इज्जत करता रहा है। तो मुझे लगता है कि वो ड्रीमी हो रहे हैं, वो आइडियलिस्ट हो रहे हैं, वो ये अपेक्षा कर रहे हैं कि हेटेरोजेनस डाइवर्स प्लूरल इंडिया में फासिज्म नहीं आ सकता। लेकिन ये जो फासिस्ट हैं ये केयरफुल हैं, ये किसी भी कम्युनिटी के, किसी भी आइडेंटिटी के का पैर कुचलते नहीं हैं, ये सावधानी से अपना रथ सावधानी से चलाते हैं। इनका जो फासिज्म का रथ है ये उबड़ खाबड़ जमीन में रौंदता हुआ नहीं चलता है, सावधानी से नेगोशिएट करता हुआ चलता है। इसलिए मुझे लगता है कि जो लोग इंडियन प्लूरलिज्म से, इंडियन टॉलरेंस से और इंडियन भक्ति के कॉम्प्लेक्स डाइवर्स रूप से अपेक्षा पाले हुए हैं कि वो फासिज्म से लड़ने के लिए काफी होगा, वो मैं कन्विंस्ड नहीं। यानी हेट्रोजेनाइटी, प्लूरालिटी के ऊपर नेशन का भी झंडा लहराया जा सकता है और इसलिए फासिज्म का भी झंडा लहराया जा सकता है, उसकी स्ट्रेटेजी डिफरेंट होगी। और इसीलिए हिंदुस्तानी फासिस्टों की स्ट्रेटेजी जर्मन फासिस्टों से या इटली के फासिस्टों से डिफरेंट है उसमें, क्योंकि सोसाइटी और हिस्ट्री डिफरेंट है। रविन्द्रनाथ टैगोर वाला मैं ये कह रहा था, पोएम जब मैंने पढ़ा तो मैं एग्जाम्पल, एक तो मैंने गलती की, जो भार्गव पॉइंट आउट कर रहे थे कि मैंने उसको अंबेडकर से जोड़ दिया, पूना पैक्ट से जोड़ दिया। वो उसके 1 साल बाद का था, गांधी जब अछूत प्रथा के विरोध में अनशन पर थे, तो उस समय टैगोर ने ये लिखा था पोएम, जिसमें उन्होंने दिखाया था कि अरे हिंदुओं, तुम लोग आज भी अछूत प्रथा का पालन करते हो, देखो तुम्हारे से 500 साल पहले ग्रेट ब्राह्मण रामानंद ने अछूत रैदास को गले लगा लिया था, जिसका उस पोएम में जिक्र है। और जिसमें पोएम को इस तरह से लिखा गया है जिसमें रामानंद ग्रेट ब्राह्मण के रूप में, ग्रेट टॉलरेंट ब्राह्मण के रूप में सामने आते हैं, और रैदास दबे कुचले रूप में सामने आते हैं, जो कहते हैं कि आप तो आसमान हैं, मैं मिट्टी की धूल हूं, कहीं हम तो दूर दूर चलते हैं लोगों से कि मेरी छाया दूसरों पर न पड़ जाए, मेरी धूल कहीं आप पर न पड़ जाए, लेकिन आपने हमारे ऊपर नजर डाल दी, यही बहुत है ये मेरे लिए। ऐसा सबसर्विएंट मानसिकता, गुलामी वाली मानसिकता की तरह से बोल रहे हैं रैदास, और रामानंद उनको उठा के गले लगा लेते हैं। और रैदास इतने प्रसन्न और ऑनर्ड फील करते हैं, इतने एक्साइटेड हो जाते हैं कि गीतों की आंधी टूट पड़ती है उनके अंदर से, रैदास के अंदर से। तो अब इसको हम आज कैसे देखते हैं? तो अच्छा हुआ कि भार्गव ने ये कहा कि वो उनको गुस्सा आया इसको पढ़ के, और मैंने एक्सप्लेन जब किया कि ये अछूत समस्या पर था तो उनका गुस्सा कम हुआ, लेकिन फिर भी गुस्सा आना चाहिए। मैं गुस्से से, मेरा विरोध नहीं है पढ़ के, लेकिन हम हिस्ट्री को कैसे देखें? हम क्या ये मान ले कि नहीं रैदास ने ऐसा नहीं किया होगा, जैसा ये टैगोर का सवर्ण है चरित्र है जो टैगोर से ये कविता लिखवा रहा है, भले ही वो अछूत प्रथा के विरोध में लिख रहे हैं, एग्जाम्पल दे रहे हैं छुआछूतवादी हिंदुओं को कि क्या तुम रामानंद से भी बड़े ब्राह्मण हो जो छुआछूत प्रैक्टिस करते हो। रामानंद ने तो दलित को गले लगा लिया था, भले उनका नोबल कॉज है, लेकिन जैसे वो लिख रहे हैं, रैदास को चित्रित कर रहे हैं और रामानंद को चित्रित कर रहे हैं, उस पर किसी को गुस्सा आ सकता है, लेकिन क्या वो ये कहेगा कि ये टैगोर बोल रहे हैं, या वो ये कहेगा कि रैदास ने ऐसा किया ही नहीं होगा और रामानंद ने ऐसा किया ही नहीं होगा, क्योंकि ब्राह्मण तो ऐसे होते हैं और दलित तो कैसे ब्राह्मण को स्वीकार करेगा। दलित को तो अपने अपने आत्म गौरव में और अपने स्वाभिमान दलित के पास होना चाहिए। अगर आज का दलित मूवमेंट ये सिखाता है दलित को कि उसे स्वाभिमानी होना चाहिए, उसे बराबरी डिमांड करना चाहिए और इज्जत डिमांड करना चाहिए, तो इसका मतलब कि हर युग में दलित जो था वो कभी भी सबसर्विएंट नहीं था, कभी भी पूजा नहीं कर रहा था ब्राह्मणों की, कभी भी ब्राह्मणों को दूर से नमस्कार नहीं कर रहा था, और ब्राह्मण ने उसे अपना लिया तो कभी भी वो पुलकित नहीं महसूस कर रहा था। ये हम कैसे कह सकते हैं? तो हमारा मतलब है कि हिस्ट्री को हम कैसे समझेंगे। हिस्ट्री में ये चीजें हुई थी, हिस्ट्री में ये चीजें हुई थी कि ये सवाल मैं इसलिए उठाता हूं क्योंकि जो ब्राह्मणों का जो लेखन था और उसका जो गौरव था, क्या उसको हम नकार देंगे क्योंकि कालिदास ब्राह्मण थे? क्या हम आर्यभट्ट के मैथमेटिक्स को और एस्ट्रोनॉमी को नकार देंगे क्योंकि वो ब्राह्मण थे? क्या हम ग्रीक्स के एस्ट्रोनॉमी को और मैथमेटिक्स को नकार देंगे क्योंकि ग्रीक्स जो थे वो स्लेव ओनर्स थे? तो ये हिस्टोरिकल एटीट्यूड क्या हो, और फ्यूचर में हम एक ऐसा इंडिया विजुअलाइज करते हैं जिसमें इंडिया, वाल्मीकि ने जो चरित्र पैदा किया राम का, उस राम को नहीं पूजेंगे, जो वाल्मीकि को एडमायर करेंगे कि वाल्मीकि इतना बड़ा तो हम कैसे सांस्कृतिक एंशियंट इंडिया को हम कैसे क्लेम करेंगे? हम जो लेफ्टिस्ट हैं, हम जो सोशल मूवमेंट वाले हैं, हम जो दलित और स्त्री आंदोलन वाले हैं, हम जो रिवोल्यूशनरी होने का दावा करते हैं या रिवोल्यूशनरी होने की कोशिश करते हैं, हमारे लिए प्राचीन भारत का नक्शा क्या है? क्या वो केवल वो ब्राह्मण भारत है जिसने बाकी शूद्रों और दलितों को दबा के रखा, अतिशूद्रों को दबा के रखा, या उस भारत में और कुछ भी हुआ? कोई साम्राज्य भी था, कोई भाषा भी थी, कोई उच्च साहित्य भी था, कोई मैथमेटिक्स भी पैदा हुआ, कोई ड्रामा भी लिखा गया। उस पे हमारा एटीट्यूड क्या होगा? ये हिस्टोरिकल एटीट्यूड हम एक प्रोग्रेसिव एजुकेटेड इंडिया से एक्सपेक्ट करते हैं। हम ये चाहते हैं कि प्रोग्रेसिव एजुकेटेड इंडिया राम को पूजने की बजाय वाल्मीकि को एडमायर करने लगे, और ये मास कल्चर का हिस्सा हो जाए। डिस्टेंट फ्यूचर इंडिया में ये मास कल्चर का हिस्सा हो जाए। जैसे मॉडर्न यूरोप में कोई ग्रीक गॉड्स को नहीं पूजता, हर कोई होमर को एडमायर करता है। होमर ने जो गॉड्स क्रिएट किए, जो कैरेक्टर्स क्रिएट किए, उनकी पूजा नहीं करता। और ग्रीक्स कब क्या करते थे ये मुझे मालूम नहीं, कम से कम मॉडर्न यूरोप जब ग्रीक एंसेस्ट्री को कबूल करता है, ग्रीक हेरिटेज को कबूल करता है, तो उन देवताओं को नहीं कबूल करता, उन महाकाव्यों को कबूल करता है। उन स्लेव ओनर्स के स्लेव ओनिंग पॉलिटिक्स को नहीं कबूल करता, लेकिन वो उन स्लेव ओनर्स में से ही सोक्रेटिस, प्लेटो, अरिस्टोटल और आर्किमिडीज पैदा हुए, उनको कबूल करता है। ये डिसर्नमेंट, ये पहचान हम लोगों में कब आएगी?
इसी संदर्भ में मुझे मैं पॉइंट जोड़ना चाहता हूँ कि डिस्पाइट डाइवर्सिटी और ग्रेट heterogeneity, some trends also become hegemonic, some trends also become dominant. That is also, I think we also need to pay attention to that. Even though there are several religions, religious sects, but some of them become dominant and all others remain, exist. But one dominant trend start influencing all others, are the general forces. I think those aspects also should be kept in mind. I think I know we have many things to discuss, and especially in Ravi's presentation, we can see at least three main things. One is what happened to the different streams of Bhakti movement, and what kind of metamorphosis they have undergone, what kind of changes happened, and how they triggered some other historical social processes. And simultaneously, what is happening in the broad social political history in those times, and what are other things happening, social economic changes that are happening in that period, and how these two things are integrating with each other, influencing each other, and that aspect is also there. And secondly, aftermath of Bhakti movement, especially during the colonial period and after independence, it's a shadow. It's currents of the Bhakti movement, and it's a shadow. How it influenced different political forces that started emerging in that period, and how they competed to occupy the political arena and influence the people's mind, and what finally happened. That's the broadly third point. So we can see that these 3 points are there, and these three are should be discussed extensively in their own right. So it seems to be there is a consensus that we need to continue this discussion under the guidance of Ravi, maybe for one more session. So we can continue that. Today, I think we can, given the time constraint, maybe we should move towards conclusion. And with this, I think we can move to conclusion today. And how do we organize the next study circle? Continuation of this, we can plan it, and maybe we can discuss in the WhatsApp group, and we can finalize that framework. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you, Ravi.